So if you can imagine getting a knock on the door from a fireman saying, you have to be out in 5 minutes, grab what is necessary and leave. And so
Hello everyone, this is Andrew and Daphne. Our guest today is Nathan Neighbour. Now, we've been connected to Nathan's family for about 30 or more years. We've known his dad most of that time and his mum, but we've never actually spoken to Nathan as far as I know, and we won't take that personally.
Neither will I.
But, it's good to talk now, although under slightly sad circumstances. But
Sure.
Nathan, for people that don't know who you are, could you just say a bit about where you're from and what you do?
Yeah, my name's Nathan. I live here in Los Angeles County. We're about a 25-minute drive from the heart of the city. And I pastor a church here, a cell church called Humanity Church, in a city called Pomona. And we're the fifth largest city in LA County. And I've been pastoring for the last 16 years here in the same city, same spot. I also work as a trainer and a coach with different nonprofits and individuals around the globe. And I'm married. My wife's named Marla. We have two kids, Jackson and Colin, who are 8 and 6. So our life is very busy and lots of fun and lots of energy around here.
And then for people that listen to this, they say we like Nathan, or they've been touched by what they've heard in this episode. Where could they find out more about you?
Yeah, you can go to, I have a website, nathanneighbour.com, the British spelling with a U, or our church is humanitychurch.com, where you can find out more about our ministry here in the city there.
Okay, and then we're going to talk about the wildfires, what's going on there. I know you're involved with helping people that have been devastated by this. Could you also just share how they find out where they could donate to help through you guys?
Yeah, we have a fund that we have open. You can go to humanitychurch.com/fire relief. It'll be on the front page of our website as well, but humanitychurch.com/fire relief. And 100% of those funds go directly to either families, churches, or faith-based recovery efforts that are taking place on the ground just a few miles from where we're talking right now.
And I'd just like to say to people listening, do be careful where you give. There's a lot of apparently good organizations, and a lot of money goes into administration. So when there's something like this and we're speaking to people, we want you to know that these are people we know, these are people we trust, and we would encourage you, send your gifts to Nathan.
Yeah, there are some big organizations that take even up to 60-70% for admin fees.
Absolutely.
So you think a lot of your money is going to the need, where actually only fractions of it are actually making it to the people.
So we'll remind you all of that at the end, but a word of caution.
Yeah, and maybe before we get to this stuff, maybe we could just rewind. How did you end up becoming a pastor? And is this an influence from your family, from your upbringing?
Yeah.
Just tell us a bit about that journey.
A little bit. Well, I am the 9th generation pastor in our family. So I come from a long line of ministers and evangelists and pastors and authors. And I fought it tooth and nail, man. I had no interest in being a pastor. I didn't want to go into ministry. And when I was 18, I had just a very strong calling into ministry. Growing up in the church, I had seen all of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so I up until then, I wanted nothing to do with it. And I really felt a calling from God saying, I want you to go into the ministry and I want you to do church different, which tends to be a neighbor trait. My grandfather has done that to my father. And so I've been doing that ever since, and just really longing to create churches, a church and support churches who are really doing innovative, spirit-led work around the world, really.
Yeah, I know your dad has had a massive impact on our lives. We wouldn't be doing a lot of what we're doing if it wasn't because of your mum and dad, and becoming really good friends of ours. And we know a lot of his stories. And so I can only imagine what it was like in your household living with these parents doing phenomenal stuff. A lot of the things they were doing are groundbreaking today, and they were doing them decades ago. And we love them. We actually saw them probably about a year ago, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Last time we saw them, went to go and catch up with them in Houston. Okay, so it was nice to hear some of that story, that family connection and the impact. Could you just talk more about what's going on today? And I think you said you're about 20-ish miles from where the fires are. Now I know fires can spread really quick,
very quickly.
I know we've heard. I heard yesterday that winds were meant to be picking up today. So you just talk about, you're 20 miles from it. Is there a risk that it could get to you, or are you far enough away from this that it probably won't make it to where you are?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of interesting factors about the fires in Los Angeles, because we're mainly a major metropolitan area with small hills, mountains that are not inhabited. And so we're not strangers to wildfires, especially during this time of the year. They pop up all the time, and they tend to pop up in clusters. So for example, right now we're monitoring the fires closely on our apps on our phones, and there's about 6 individual fires that are all taking place right now. So while we're pretty far from any of the active fires right now, the unfortunate thing is embers can travel through the wind pretty far and start up new fires. And just the nature of human evil, a lot of these fires inspire arsonists to go out and start more fires. So while we're currently about probably 10 miles from the fire's edge and not in danger, it's one of those things where at any moment that could be at our doorstep as well.
So bearing that in mind, have you taken precautions in case you had to flee? Or what goes through your head in this situation, bearing in mind some people had no forewarning, but when you're in a situation you can, what do you do? What do you think?
Yeah, well, we have a pretty well-organized communication system around fires. And so like right now, our city is in a level 3 evacuation, which means you're probably not going to evacuate, but just be prepared. And so, we have a list of things that you immediately grab if things are get serious, passports, birth certificates, pets, wedding photos, computers,
children.
Things like that are children. Yes, they would be on the list as well. And so it's a scary thing thinking I'm leaving my home and I get to pack what I can in my car. And unfortunately, that's what keeps a lot of people from evacuating, is they think, oh, I have time, or I can stay and I can fight this on my own. And then that usually puts people in even greater danger because they don't actually heed the evacuation warnings. But yeah, there's a lot of monitoring, like having stuff prepared here, but then also being in communication with those who we know who are in active fire zones and seeing what they need, how we can support housing, food, all of the things that come with that.
You're talking a bit about preparation in terms of family, households, etc. Does that look different in terms of preparation in terms of a church? What's your thinking around the church side of things, and how is your church ready to mobilize in these kinds of situations?
Yeah, it's this particular. So like I said, we have fires every year, and most of them are in uninhabited areas. There'll be a few cabins that burn down. The particular nature of this fire that's so devastating is it's taking out entire cities. So when you look at a map of, for example, the Pacific Palisades, which is one of the cities that has hit the hardest, that city's almost completely gone. Arcadia and Altadena, which is a city 20 minutes from here that we have multiple friends that live in, half of that city is gone. So we've never had to prepare for a fire like this, which has been kind of dizzying, trying to figure out what the immediate need is. And I will say the church has been, not just our church, but the church has been unbelievable in this time of organizing food, clothing, shelter, counseling needs, prayer groups. We were just at a church 2 blocks from the fire on Saturday, and hundreds of volunteers showed up from churches from the area to sort clothing, to sort food, to man stations to get supplies out, and supplies and donations were pouring in, almost to the point where they had to say, we have too much, like don't give any more stuff, which sounds crazy, but in that moment we just couldn't handle anymore. So there's that. I love that the church has responded in that way, and now the church is really responding with counseling opportunities, prayer opportunities just to sit and be with people who have literally lost everything and are struggling just to figure out what's next. We have people in the church who are insurance experts who are helping people get back with their insurance to make sure that they are covered for the next week before they even get to rebuild. So it really has been a testament to the power of the church. And we live in Los Angeles, which is a very liberal, unchurched area. And I just think this is such a beautiful opportunity to the church, for the church to show up in a way that people go, oh, this is what it's about. This is the power of communities who are connected to the Spirit of God and are committed to serving the world. And so that's been a light in the midst of the darkness over the last few days to see that take place.
So can you give us some stories? I mean, story sounds no depth to it, but you're having these people come, and often we can identify when you tell us some stories of what you have heard and what you have seen.
Yeah. Well, there's one of the churches that we're partnering with in Pasadena is, like I said, is literally 2 blocks from the fire. We're very connected with them. We have mutual friends. But I'll tell you 2 families that have lost everything. One is a family with 5 children who were living in a small house there in Altadena, and they had to evacuate within 5 minutes. So if you can imagine getting a knock on the door from a fireman saying, you have to be out in 5 minutes, grab what is necessary and leave. And so there's, and then they're staying within the church now, living within the church, which is not really prepared for showers or, children's nighttime routines, things like that. But the beautiful thing is they've actually said, we felt so cared for, and there has not been a single need that has gone unmet in that. But even now, talking with them, a lot of the children are just in such a place of trauma. You can imagine as adults going through, what's my next step? But even as a kid processing, I just lost every toy, my bed, the home that's safe and secure for me is all gone. That's just such a difficult thing for a child to process. And so even the family has said having familiar faces from Sunday school, from their small groups, from church that are with them, and even being able to take their kids to familiar homes that they're connected with in the church has been quite helpful for the kids as they've been trying to process, where is even a safe space for me to be right now? We have another family who, a similar situation, who lost everything in the fire within a matter of minutes. And he just posted on Facebook the other day, it's a weird feeling to only own a pair of jeans and 2 t-shirts, and that's the only thing to your name, and one of the things that was so beautiful was he put on Instagram, he said, look, I have a big need. I need a car for the next month because I can't get my kids around. I can't do what I'm needed. And within a minute, someone was like, absolutely, here's our car. You take it for the next 2 months. We don't need it. We'll figure something out. Um, so it's been like unthinkable devastation that's taken place and that's still going on. And like I said, it's been just really powerful stories of how the church has come together to um, be the church and to create relief and hope in the midst of hopelessness.
So have you had, I presume you have, connection with people who are completely unchurched, so they haven't got that already support network around them?
Yeah, the amazing thing is a lot of the pastors who are directly in the line of fire, and even some of those who we're talking with, there's two things that have been really powerful. One is unchurched people who are now showing up to churches because they're the quickest way to get aid and resources. And the one thing that's been like pretty powerful is the openness to prayer right now. It's amazing how even in these moments, atheists will take a prayer. We'll take some type of encouragement, support, and so there's been that amazing thing to watch as non-believers are showing up to a lot of these churches, faith-based centers, for aid, support, and then getting more than that, getting spiritual support, emotional support, and being open to that. But probably the thing that is more inspiring is non-believers who are looking at this crisis going, who are the leaders on the ground who we can partner with, and how do I support them? So I have atheist friends who are calling me saying, hey, I know your church is doing something. How can we be a part of it? Do you need money? Do you need stuff? Can we show up to clear rubble from homes? And so I got a call from our landlord at the building that we rent yesterday, saying, "Hey, we want to be a part of your donation drive. Can we supply space? Can we give donations?" I was on the phone with the mayor of our city last night, saying, "Hey, we don't need to recreate the wheel. Why don't we just use what you're doing as our relief effort?" So the fact that we're getting to not only serve non-believers who are in need, but also partner with non-believers in serving. And I'm believing that this is just going to reframe how people see the church as an active agent of hope and service in the community, and less of an irrelevant relic that is disconnected from their lives.
Yeah.
I can't imagine being in your position and seeing this absolute devastation, overwhelming. I mean, you can't calculate what's going, you don't know what's going on. And not looking at it and feeling paralyzed almost, knowing you want to help, but where do you start? How do you start? You haven't got a plan that you can say, well, that's what we do. I mean, how have you handled that yourself as a leader and as a father?
Yeah, my friends that are in recovery ministries, 12 steps, I love their outlook because they really live from a framework of, I'm just responsible for today. I'm just responsible for today. And so, yeah, it is overwhelming looking at if I was to look at the next 6 months, 2 years, even decade of recovery, it's going to be, it's overwhelming. Our governor has come out saying this is potentially the worst natural disaster in American history. They're estimating the current damage in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Not to mention just some of the natural historic landmarks and beauty that has been just completely destroyed. It is incredibly overwhelming to think, how do we recover from this? And so my wife and I and my community, I've just really been encouraging people to, let's focus on today and what are the needs right now that we can meet, and what are the needs here in this moment that we can come up with, and let's work towards long-term solutions once we're out of the emergency. And I think that's the thing that people don't realize is the fires are still burning. We had a little bit of reprieve over the weekend, but today the winds are supposed to kick back up to 50, 60 miles an hour. And that just it spreads the fire like crazy. So, yeah, when you look at what the future holds or even what next week holds, it's pretty overwhelming. So that's been one of the gifts for me, even, is just the gift of, all right, God, what are you doing right now? And how can we be a part of that?
If you live in New Orleans and your house doesn't have certain things, you aren't able to get insurance for things like hurricanes and floodings. So, for example, in
Yeah.
certain areas, your house has to be on a platform, a certain height, then you can qualify to get insurance to cover you for flooding or hurricane damage. Do you have anything like that over in California where, like, let's say if you live in a certain zone, you don't qualify for wildfire damage?
Yeah. Well, that's been the biggest fear right now is, and not to create conspiracy theories, I'll just give you the straight news as it's coming out.
I'm sure everyone would love a conspiracy theory.
Yes, I know. And a hot take on a podcast, right?
Yeah, come on, let's go.
But several of the major insurance companies canceled hundreds of thousands of fire policies within the last 6 to 2 months on many of the homes that have burned down. And part of that is due to new California regulations that have put restrictions on increasing premiums in fire zones. And so, ironically, in an effort to save people money from insurance increasing the price, the insurance companies basically just said, great, well, then we'll just take away fire insurance because we can't afford it anymore. And so that has been a big part of that. Now, ironically, most Californians don't have earthquake insurance. Most companies won't cover earthquake insurance, which is one of our biggest natural disasters. But most people have or had fire insurance, and many of the homes that are burned were canceled in the last 6 to 2 months. And so there's some state insurance that's kicking in. The federal government's looking at what they can do to make sure that this is covered. But the immediate response from insurance companies that normally would say, great, we'll get you a place to stay, we'll make sure you have a car, we'll cover your immediate expenses. A lot of them are coming back and saying, yeah, your fire insurance was canceled in the last 6 months. So that's creating a lot more confusion, heartbreak, headache for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm sure we could say a lot about the insurance companies, but we'll leave them on the bench for now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of the people that you talked about, the stories you shared, are some of them those people that had insurance cancelled? And so actually, like, people may listen to this and go, well, maybe we can meet some immediate needs, but actually long-term insurance will cover it and they'll be just fine. But that's not obviously the case from what you've just said.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are, ironically, one of the groups that are volunteering their time right now are insurance attorneys who are fighting insurance companies like in the moment, saying, hey, you have to get these people paid for fire insurance for the 6 months before this. You have to get them hotels, rental spaces, a place to stay immediately. But those are some of the immediate needs for those who don't have that available. How can we get, staying in a shelter with a cot for a few days works. It doesn't really work, for a month. When you have work to go to and kids to tend to and school and things like that. So yeah, the need is great. Airbnb has actually opened up free housing rentals for people here. So that's been a gift. But yeah, we're also looking at people with spare rooms, people with extra back houses, things like that could be open for a week or two while people just figure out how to get back on their feet.
Something like this is, I was going to say, a great leveler. And I don't mean it's good necessarily, but you all suddenly are on the same page. I mean, we are getting what we hear in the news, so
yeah,
may or may not be true. But it seems there are a lot of people who, very famous, very wealthy, have lost everything. Now, I don't know what they've got in the bank. I mean, often if you've ploughed everything into your property and your house or a
Yes.
lot, so forget what's in the bank. Those people are standing shoulder to shoulder with somebody who had a little shack on a little square of ground, and they stand shoulder to shoulder as we've lost everything. How do we
Yeah.
start again?
Yeah, and that's been you're right. Some of the celebrities, of course, can rebuild. Some of them have the resources too, but it's the emotional leveling. It's the same
Mm,
experience of losing. A home is such a intimate space. It's such a vulnerable space. I've had my home like burglarized before. Someone's come in and even just that experience is so just it leaves you vulnerable and feeling like,
mm.
man, I don't. Someone was in my space. I can't imagine having everything you own gone in a matter of moments. And so, yes, it has been leveling. And what people often don't know about Los Angeles is the way the cities are organized is, yeah, you can have multi-million-dollar homes and go 5 streets over, and you have people who are landscapers, who are making minimum wage living there. So these cities that have been leveled have both the multimillionaires and your blue collar worker all together having lost everything. And ironically, they're all in the same shelters now as well.
Wow. And what you have lost your history almost,
Yeah.
haven't you? You've lost your children's first pictures, the
Yes.
charts that they grew up with. You have lost your parents'
Yeah.
wedding photos. I mean, it is so invasive that I can't get my head around it, and I'm sure people who are in it can't get their head around it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was talking with someone the other day, and they said I had my prayer journals from when I was a girl to today, and they're all of them are gone. Years and years of even just treasured spiritual things. And even Marla and I, as we've looked around our home, obviously we're not in imminent danger, but I have my grandfather's Bible and my great grandparents, tea towels and things like that, and you're not going to grab those when you're going, but they'll never be there again.
It reminds me of the scripture, I think it's in Hebrews, where it says, that which can be shaken will be
Yes.
shaken. And
Yeah.
this, without trying to dive too far into this prophetically, it seems this is what's happening right there with you. I mean, everything
Yeah.
that can be
Yeah.
shaken
Globally. I mean, there's so
is,
many global events and
yeah.
issues going on right now.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
you're
And it
standing in
really
the middle of
is.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really makes you consider what matters most, and that at the end of our days, this none of we don't get to keep any of this. And so, yeah, not to capitalize on a tragedy, but it has been very eye-opening spiritually to think what does matter most, and what is the texture of my life if I lost everything? Do I have people around me? Do I have community? Do I have support? Where do I even turn emotionally, spiritually for that? So my prayer is that this would bring a revival of sorts to Southern California. I've always said that Southern California is one of God's favorite places to start spiritual wildfires. You look at many great movements of the church in America. They've started in Los Angeles, whether it was the Jesus People or the Calvary Chapel movement, or some of the Azusa Street revival. I just think, all right, Lord, let's have another move of your Spirit in the midst of unthinkable circumstances here.
One of the things I've seen in the news, I think it was yesterday or today, is that there's a lot of money that had been removed from the fire department out there and funneled into various other organizations. Again, probably lots of things to say about the organizations that money went to, but let's look at the detrimental side of it from the fire department. Pretty crippling. And I know there's been a lot of questions asked of the politicians out there, I guess the governor or your local, I'm from England, so your local representatives,
mayors, things like that,
mayors, etc. So have you had a chance, or will you have a chance to be able to ask some of those people that you know about that side of things, and what are they going to change maybe into the future to help better prepare and equip the fire department instead of removing that support from them?
Yeah, luckily our local city officials we're very connected with, and we've been in some of those conversations already about where our city exists. But I think this is going to force some much needed conversations around budgets and where money is went to and how things are allocated. Yeah, the anger and frustration. Look, on one hand, I have some empathy because I know anytime there's a natural disaster, people want someone to crucify, and so I understand that. And it seems like initially there's been some extreme mismanagement of funding and resources that's taken place. And so I think this is going to force some really big conversations around what's needed to move California into a different space. California is a very, we're very clear on climate change and the natural ecosystem. And some of those are needed conversations, but I think there's really going to need to be a conversation now around what's the balance between protecting the environment and making sure that people are protected, here, and the resources are needed to not have this happen again.
So there's sort of the immediate, the midterm, the long-term needs that people are going to have. Some will have insurance, some won't have insurance. You've talked a bit about some of those things, but maybe we could just talk a bit more about that for people listening, for people that are in that kind of area, still safe zones. You've mentioned, hey, do you have spare beds? Do you have, obviously you have your church and churches that you're networked into, but for people listening that are maybe in that region, maybe we could just talk a bit about what are things that they can do when they're much closer to you. And then maybe, as you get further out from California, what are things that people that live even internationally, what are things that they can do as well?
Yeah, well, I think locally, there's a couple of things. One is there's lists of items needed, that everyone rushes to food and clothing, which is great. And we have a plethora of that right now. There's other items that people don't think about, like diapers and blood sugar monitors and insulin, things like that are just needed items. And so we have donation centers. There's lots of donation centers in the region that people can give to. Obviously, financial support is a big one.
Sorry, just stopping on that one. The physical product stuff. Are people able to purchase those from different places and have them delivered to a center, or do you have to actually be there to give it to them?
That's a great question. We are receiving donations right now, so I imagine that if I could give you our address, and we could put it maybe in the show notes if you have them. But I'm sure people could Amazon and have them shipped or sent, or Walmart, whatever it may be, and have those sent. So that would probably be an option for people who are out of the area.
Even if they give directly to you guys, you can do with
that. Yeah, exactly. And then we could go on the floor and buy. But yeah, then so there's a lot of just lists of needs that even when I got the list, I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. It's amazing the things that you don't even think about when when you've lost everything, you need everything back. So.
Well, I'm going to mention one thing. Feminine products.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
I mean,
people, you don't think about that.
No.
Yeah. In fact, I'm just looking at our list right now of things that people are needing, and it's just stuff that you don't often think about. So going through those lists is helpful if in the area. Like I said, when we went through the clothing and food donations on Saturday, we almost had triple the amount of what we could even give away. It's a lot of these other items that people don't necessarily think about that we need, even like toothpaste, and shampoo for the pop-up showers and things like that are helpful. And then obviously financial donations are huge. I anticipate in the next few weeks and months, that's when the churches are going to feel the hit, because right now there's so much aid going in. I imagine in the next few months when people are like, hey, I don't have food or I don't have shelter, and all of the Red Cross is not here anymore, all the massive organizations, I imagine that's when a lot of this is going to be needed for that. And then we're also working with the first responders, making sure that they're taken care of as well. A lot of these first responders are working 18-hour days, and so we're making sure that they're that they're taken care of as well, just getting food and things in their own service. So yeah, those are two big. And then I would say if you're local and you're a follower of Jesus, there's a huge need just for people to show up and pray at these centers, especially faith-based centers will allow you to do that. Churches, like I said, people are very open to prayer, counseling, just even a hug right now. So I think we immediately think of physical needs, and there's so many emotional and spiritual needs as well in this time. And I think that's where people who may not have as many resources can show up and be like, I'll pray for 3 hours for whoever wants to show up, and I'll just bless them in that. And so, yeah.
Do you have a way for someone to contact you if, for example, maybe this isn't immediate, this may be more medium to long term, but let's say there's a counselor who says, for example, child counseling is a certain expertise. And so they say, hey, look, I'm a child counselor or a general counselor. I'll be willing to offer time to help, whether that's there or online, that they can contact you and say, hey, look, this is something I'm willing to help with. Mobilize me as you wish. Or maybe someone in construction that says, I'm willing to come in and donate time to help with something. So do you have a contact that someone could reach out to?
Yeah, it's really easy. You can just email info at humanitychurch.com. That's where we're just sending everything there, info at humanitychurch.com. And one of our pastors will get back to you about I feel like we're kind of like the middleman between a lot of organizations that are like directly in the fire and around the globe. And I think that's where we're serving best right now, is creating networks for people who want to serve and give, which has been great.
Well, before we wind up, is there anything you want to say that we haven't given you a platform to say yet?
Yeah, one of the things that's been disturbing and hard to hear is a lot of very probably well-meaning church people have said this is God's wrath on a godless Los Angeles, or a city that so much sin has come from. And I just believe that God loves Los Angeles, and that he has done some amazing work in and through this city, and he's going to continue to. And so I don't see this as God's judgment on us. I see this as just the part of the fall of we live in a fallen world. And I think that this is the time to pray for Los Angeles. Los Angeles is such an influential city. I don't agree with his beliefs, but Karl Marx once said that Los Angeles sneezes and the world catches a cold, And so if there was ever a time for God to move in a city that had so much influence, this is it. And I believe that this is where God can use situations like this to get people's attention and to wake up something that may be deep dormant in people's spirits. And so I believe that this is a time for the global church. Andrew, you asked just to pray for Los Angeles and to pray that God would use this season to show up and to really create revival in a city that I believe he's used historically to impact the world.
Well, as we finish, I'd like to say to people who are listening, please don't just listen to this. Please pass it on, share it, and please respond to what Nathan has said. We can pray. Hopefully we can encourage you, Nathan. But let's also act. This is a time, and all of us can give something. And perhaps on the long term, we will have Nathan back again in a few weeks.
Whether he wants to or not.
We're announcing that. Okay. So that we can track with what's happening. We can be updated with needs and what we can do, etc. So this isn't a one-off. Just as we have with other podcasts, we've tracked with Ukraine, we've tracked with Israel. Well, this is California's time for us to focus and track. And I just want to say to you, Nathan,
for those just listening now, she's some tears.
I just want to say, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face shine upon you. And in the midst of such turmoil, may he give you and your family his peace.
Yeah, I know for us, when we host events or we're dealing with issues, we don't just ask people to pray, we ask them to act, to do something, put feet to the prayers. So even if you're in a room and let's say you're praying for someone in a persecuted nation, we'll then mobilize ways to write letters to those people. And so let's not just listen to this or watch this and say, yeah, I'll pray. Yes, pray. But let's look at ways. Nathan's talked about some. We'll have information in the description box, but let's look at ways that you can pray and act, put feet to those prayers as well. So Nathan, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here. It's been good to talk to you, even though we have heard but not spoken for 30 plus years. And so thank you. Yeah, really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Remember, if it inspired you, share it with others so we can see more people engaged in this community.